I was reading some of your comments that you issued shortly after that derailment. I mean, frankly, we're focusing right now on East Palestine, but between Hudson, Lakewood, Avon Lake, so many communities in Northeast Ohio have train tracks that zip right through. This really could have happened in anybody's backyard.
Nicole, that's absolutely right. I mean, the tracks come probably within a quarter mile of my house, right through Hudson, Ohio, and as you mentioned, pass through many other communities as well. So yeah, this could have happened anywhere along the tracks in Ohio.
So the hearing tomorrow, this seems to be like the first step for any kind of state action. What do you anticipate to happen, things to come out of tomorrow's committee meeting?
So the Select Committee on Rail Safety, we're setting up to do, I'd say, three things primarily. One is to really do a deep dive into what happened in East Palestine, what went wrong. We want to talk to the different officials. We want to hear from the residents. We certainly want to hear from anyone that had anything to do with it, has any knowledge of the situation. Second thing we want to find out is what is being done to address that current situation in East Palestine, both from the environmental perspective, but then also for the residents of not only East Palestine, but the surrounding areas that might be affected. And then also, just as importantly, what can be done to prevent future disasters? So we really want to just really dig into what happened. And we're going to start that process tomorrow. You mentioned you'll be here tomorrow. We're going to start in Columbus. I am certainly encouraging the chair of the committee to take this study committee on the road. I'd like to see us go to East Palestine and directly speak with the people there to be able to witness what's happening and just really see it firsthand. Tomorrow's committee, we're going to hear from the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency as well as the Ohio Department of Public Safety. So that's where we're going to start, and then we'll go from there.
You know, hearing from mayors out here, emergency responders out here, what can be done at the state level to provide more communication really across the board if a train goes across a city, a township, a village? What can be done to communicate better with those first responders, with the mayors, with people who need to know what specifically is on that train at specific times during the day? Is there anything on a state level that can help improve that communication?
So Nicole, that's a great question, and communication is absolutely critical to solving this issue going forward. So the question we're going to try to dive into and resolve is how much of this, rail traffic really defines interstate commerce, and interstate commerce is largely governed by the federal government, right? Because the train is passing over multiple borders. But the question is, what can we do as a state to ensure rail safety, ensure the safety of our citizens, and make sure that that information of what is being transported is communicated directly to the municipalities through which it is traveling, so they could, in the worst case scenario, be prepared and be ready and be aware. Another issue of communication that I think needs to be improved is the communication. There were these hot boxes right along the track currently that they were reading the increase in temperature. But for some reason, my understanding is this was not actually communicated real time to the engineer in the train, so the train didn't stop in time before we got to a critical point and a disaster occurred. So what can be done to improve communications to the engineer driving the train, right? In today's day and age, there's no reason at all that they're not getting real-time information about what's happening along the length of their train.
Yeah, absolutely, with the technology being what it is. I won't keep you too much longer, but Governor DeWine, you know, himself, he said it was just absolutely ridiculous that this particular train was not flagged or didn't have to be flagged as far as carrying hazardous material because it didn't have enough hazardous or not enough train cars to be able to flag that. Is there anything at the state level that can be done to change that, or is that something you really have to reach out, you know, on a federal level to be able to do?
Well, Nicole, that's something we're certainly going to dig into. I had heard that same point made, and it seems incomprehensible that you could play games with sort of thing. You know, the fact that perhaps there's just under the percentage threshold or the not right number of cars in a row. that you should not be able to ever get around that. I mean, I'm for smaller government, and certainly for free markets, but when it comes to these cars full of toxic chemicals, this is absolutely an place for regulation. So we will try to find out through this committee what we can do as a state, what will can our federal partners do. And of course, I would have to imagine that the rail companies themselves, and we'll be talking to them too. I mean, I would have to believe that their shareholders, their board of directors don't want this to happen ever again either, right? So I don't think there's anybody in this country that would love to see that such a disaster happen again. So
And
we're all
when we
going to work
talk
together to try to prevent it.
When we do talk specifically about those rail companies, let's talk Norfolk Southern. We have 3 separate derailments that have happened across Northeast Ohio here. We just talked to a man who literally had a train derail last year in his backyard, still not cleaned up. We had a train derailment in Sandusky, Norfolk Southern related as well. The road literally just opening up after 5 months. I know it's front and center in East Palestine and a lot of eyes on Norfolk Southern, but at a state level, what can you do to be able to hold a railroad company, Norfolk Southern, or anyone else that goes through here more accountable for these cleanups with or without hazardous chemicals?
Well, certainly that is absolutely something that we're looking into both through this committee and just I know my colleagues on both sides of the aisle are trying to figure out what is it that we can do with even though interstate commerce, what can we do as a state to put regulations in place, common sense regulations that improve the safety of Ohioans. And then, with respect to Norfolk Southern, again, I have to believe, and we will be talking with them and their representatives, at least that's my intention, to see what they're going to be putting in place. Personally, one thing that I did see in the transportation budget and have been raising some flags on is the sale of the Cincinnati Southern Railroad. That eventually is going to go to voters, right, through some of the ballot. But the General Assembly, I think, needs to approve that to go to the voters. And my position on that is, hold up. There's no need to increase the ownership of Norfolk at this point. Of more rail in Ohio. Now, I understand that they're currently operating it, but we don't want to add insult to injury.
Right, because they're the only buyer, is my understanding. All right, and last question, because again, I don't want to keep you too long. I do appreciate you taking the time to speak with us ahead of tomorrow's hearing. What are you hearing from your constituents, from residents in Hudson, in your area, after this train derailment? And what are their concerns right now in your community regarding rail safety?
Oh, well, like I said, I mean, the tracks come right through Hudson. And so there are people obviously concerned about the immediate effects of, water quality and air quality. Now, the way the wind blows and the way the water flows in the watersheds. But you never can be sure. So everyone's, wanting to test their water and be particularly careful. But going forward, people are very concerned. I mean, could this happen in our town next? And they're rightfully concerned. I mean, I'm concerned as well. I can hear that whistle blowing from my house multiple times a day. It's a constant reminder that this is something that we need to address because the safety of Ohioans are our utmost and paramount concern.